Jason with Chicago News. Now, I'm not nearly as cool as James Bond, but they have lent me his car for the day. We're out here in LA, we're up on Mulholland Drive. We've got the brand new 2018 Aston Martin DB11. This one's got the V8 twin turbo. Let's check it out. Okay, introduce myself, check. Introduce the car, check. Good, I got that out of the way. Let's get driving. So of course we left Mulholland Drive, and being LA, the first thing that happened is we got on the freeway and got stuck in traffic, but we're clear of that now. Being in traffic was a great time to check out the interior, to really look at all the little details inside this Aston, and it's just as gorgeous on the inside as it is on the outside. But now we've basically hit the entrance to Angel's Crest Highway, which is, you know, a great place to take a car like this to really see what it can do. When you're cruising around in town and have this in comfort mode, it's as docile as it gets. The engine response is nice and smooth. The suspension soaks up the bumps. It's as comfortable really as it gets, especially for a car that when you change modes and change scenery, you get some of the most intense driving experience you can get from a GT like this. One of the great things about this twin turbo V8 is the instant torque that you get. Unless you're at very low RPM, there's very little lag. Throttle response is excellent. One of the things you worry about with an automatic transmission backing an engine like this is that you'll have some lag. When you step on the pedal, you'll feel that torque converter spool up before it catches a gear. This feels extremely direct. Right as I tip in, you can feel immediately you have some torque under your foot. Now that we've got it up here at Angel's Crest Highway, we're going to switch it over to Sport Plus mode, and immediately it drops a gear and you hear that engine note change. We've also got suspension settings. As far as settings go in here, it's really cool. You've got 3 settings for each of your different modes that you might want. So you've got 3 powertrain settings: Comfort, Sport, and Sport Plus. That's your engine mapping, your transmission control, everything that controls your powertrain. Now on the other side, you've got your suspension. You've got 3 settings there as well. And then for traction control, you've got 3 settings, which are standard, off, and track. So you've got basically a really simple array of settings that allows you to tailor this exactly how you want. One of my favorite settings is to leave the suspension in comfort mode, but have the engine and transmission in Sport Plus. It gives you all the sharpness that you want and gives you the best ride quality. It's sort of the best sport everyday mode. Okay, so now that we've got this thing in sport modes, we're going to click over to the manual mode in the gearbox and let's see what this thing can do. Oh yeah! Listen to that V8. You certainly miss the V12 in certain situations, but once you dip into that twin turbo torque, you don't miss it quite as much. Listen to that. Again, with the V8, you find that the nose is much more pointable. This thing has better turn-in. Having less weight on the nose from the V8 as opposed to the V12 really comes through the steering wheel. You feel a lightness, you feel a better ability to direction change. The turn-in is fantastic. It tracks your steering better. Really, it's kind of a better driving experience. You know, the V12 obviously sings, but this AMG-derived V8, it burbles and pops, and it really gives you an exciting feel. You know, one of the things you worry about with a turbo engine is that it's going to sound muted as the exhaust has to pass through the turbos, but I don't know. Between you and me, does that sound muted to you? You hear that little burble on each downshift. Again, that's a very AMG-like thing, and what the Aston engineers have done is they've taken this AMG engine and they've tuned the sound to take a lot of the bass out of it, to give it a little bit more high-frequency sound. And it really comes through. This has a more refined sound than sort of the sledgehammer sound you would get from a Mercedes application. And it's one of the ways that they're differentiating this from, you know, where the engine's real source is. It certainly is a Mercedes engine, but it's got an Aston feel to it. Really, does it get much better than a car like this on a road like this? I don't think so. Last time when we got the chance to drive the V12 Vanquish, it had a much more tricked out interior. You had the quilted stitching, you had red leather. This is a real understated version. It's a black leather interior. It's got sort of the standard stitching patterns on it, but still has that incredible feel. The way the leather is even just applied to the door cards, you just has this tactile feel that you only get in a car like this. Our test car here has this center trackpad, and really in terms of controlling some of the systems, there's lots of different ways to do it. We've driven some other cars with trackpads that are not nearly as easy to use as this one. You get these brackets that highlight exactly where you're going to be selecting the next function, and then you click, and then there's actually a wheel underneath here, so you can use the wheel or the trackpad itself. There's also 2 rotary knobs on the steering wheel, so there's a couple different ways to control it, and you can kind of figure out exactly what works best for you. It's actually a really good control system, and even just the shape of this instrument cluster is a very Aston-like feel to it. There's everything kind of looks in its place, but when you go into the ordering book for one of these, there's dozens of colors of leather that you can choose, different stitching patterns. One of the things we loved most in the Vanquish that we drove was the Bang & Olufsen stereo system, which is again available here and in our test car, and I will tell you it's definitely one of the best stereos that money can buy. It really has incredible clarity, bass. It's got a great soundstage, and it even sounds fantastic when paired to your phone, so they've got really high quality Bluetooth streaming. Just yet another feature that sets it apart from the crowd. It really rounds out the experience, makes everything in this car really feel special. So we hit a nice curvy section here. Let's see how this thing does. Again, just that instant torque of the V8. Brakes feel fantastic, great pedal feel, good modulation. Even with the suspension on the stiffest mode, it really soaks up the bumps here. Tons of grip. Never feel like it really is getting away from you at all. Tons of feedback through the steering wheel and through your seat. Great power down on the exit. This is definitely more capable than some of the previous Astons I've driven. It's got just a better overall feel. It's more sure-footed, it's more stable, it's more planted. This just feels engineered better, ultimately. You know, there's lots of cars that you can get in this price range that do some of the same things that this Aston does. Maybe even does some of them better, but there's just something unmistakable about the feel of an Aston, and that's really what makes this car special in the end. And maybe it's what's made Aston special all along. It's sort of that combination of a beautiful design with a long hood in front of you and an amazing driving experience and an amazing auditory experience, and it all just comes together to create something that you can't get in any other car. Well, that was fun, and I mean everything we tried. It was a blast. I've got some thoughts here. The transmission, again, a 6-speed manual would be great, but it's really incredible how they've tuned the automatic to not feel like an automatic. This thing has snappy shifts. It really grabs when you pull the paddle, or when you have it in sport mode. It really engages quickly. It doesn't feel like an automatic. It's actually getting to the point where we don't need dual clutches when you can control an automatic transmission this well. The interior of our test car is certainly not the most audacious Aston interior we've ever seen, but the fit and finish is actually maybe the best of any Aston we've seen. And really it's that advancement and that refinement of this that makes it even better. It's not every day you get to drive a car like this, let alone take it on track, but today we get to do both. First thing you notice, that V8 power is just incredible. You definitely don't miss the 2 cylinders over the V12 just because of how much torque this vehicle has, twin turbos. What it does too is it makes it more responsive to your foot. As soon as you tip in like that, exiting this corner, you get power immediately. Coming up into a tight left-hander here. Great turn in. It's not as sharp as you might think on turn-in, but one thing that's critically different here is that the V12 has a lot more weight on the nose. Here, this thing is a little bit sharper, So we're talking a car here that's more of a grand tourer than a track car. But man, this thing is getting after it. Tail moves around a little bit, but nice and friendly. Up over the rise, grab fourth gear through 100 miles an hour. I mean, it's just silky fast. Coming up to the fast right-hander here across the backside of the course, 107 miles an hour at entry, soaking up the bumps even on the stiffest suspension setting. You really get the sense that this thing can do it all. It can do the track, or it can gobble up miles on the highway. For a car that looks like this, for it also to be able to perform like this, fantastic. I could certainly talk about this car all day long and for sure drive around the track the rest of the day, but let's get some other people's opinion. We've got Gary and Alex here. We're going to find out what they think.
I'm a baby boomer and a guy who, since he was probably 12 years old, looked at James Bond movies longingly, watching James Bond, first Sean Connery and then all the others, drive Aston Martins, DB5, all the way up to where we are now. The car has always been one of those fantasy cars for me. There's exotics, there's supercars, but the Aston Martin has always been an exotic that had class and yet still had muscle. So when this car was presented to me to drive, I jumped at the chance. You can hear the engine. It goes from being tame to being a monster in just a small touch of the pedal. It's got the Sport mode, Sport Plus, GT modes, and each one of them, surprisingly to me, really was different. I've been in cars where they call it a Sport mode, they call it a different mode, and really it doesn't do anything other than make you feel better that maybe you had that mode available to you, but this one actually does do something. I leave it to the engineers at Aston Martin to tell me how they do it and what they do, but I do know that it's different and it's a thrill to drive. Grabs the road. I don't worry as I go into a turn or accelerate into a straight that I'm going to slide or lose control. The car is made for those people who have aspired to have an unbelievable car, and when they go out looking for one, this one has got to be on the list. It would be on mine. All the materials are top of the line, the touch and feel of the materials and the way they're put together, it just screams rich. It accelerates without having to go into the paddle shifting. It accelerates and it shifts gears just as quickly in the automatic mode as it does in the paddle shifting manual mode. The sound of it, especially in the Sport Plus mode, is loud. It growls. Okay, so listen to this. For as much speed as you can have out of it, all the handling, and it's got the power on a straightaway easily up to 115, 120 before I'm told to slow it down, which is right about now. I have all the confidence in the world driving this car. Pushing it. Woo! 115 with a sharp turn, well, a pretty sharp turn coming up.
But being here today on a track in an Aston Martin, of all things, is absolutely amazing. It just looks so menacing there, but it also has such a classic look where you can take it to any place on any day. It's always been, no matter where you are and you see an Aston Martin, you know exactly what it is. It's a very distinct look. Oh, listen to this. Right now I have the suspension in its hardest setting in Sport Plus mode, and it really just transforms the car from a car that was able to drive all day yesterday around town, through the city, into an absolute track monster here, where I feel every bump in the road, and that's a good thing. I feel every little nuance of the road, and I can feel where I'm going. I can feel what the tires are doing. If I was to turn that into Sport Plus, the sound on this would be amplified at least 2 times. It would be twice as loud and a really low burble, really nice, some backfiring also when you downshift. It just sounds amazing. These are the kind of cars where this is what they're made to do. This is what they're built to do. Everything is much faster. Right now I'm going to floor it through the big take straight. Go into the chicanes. But everything here, I'm still in GT mode and I'm still in the softest suspension setting, and even still, there's really no body roll. Everything is cornering very flat.
We've had a really full day with this Aston, and there's some things I want to highlight here. First of all, the design of this is spectacular. It's a modernization of the classic Aston Martin design. You've got the grille in the front that really just sells Aston Martin. There's a really edgy and modern design language on top of that Aston feel, which is what's really cool here. There's just a lot of angularity here than instead of the softer, smoother lines. You still have these real aggressive haunches. It's a really muscular look. It really screams front engine rear drive coupe with the long sloping nose that comes back into this really wide rear end. It's just a gorgeous design. Here's an example of what I'm talking about. Within this modern edgy design, you've got a very classic shaped Aston Martin taillight, and this really completes the look. It really gives you the emotion that you're looking for out of an Aston Martin. This Aston Martin has some really amazing aero designs, and something that's probably the coolest feature is this rear wing. Instead of having an ugly spoiler on the back, the air enters here, it travels through the quarter panel, actually into the trunk, and then exits up here. The wing is actually hidden inside this trunk panel. When you open this really cool clamshell hood, you get a really good look at all of the things that make this thing cool. Normally in an Aston, you'd see a big long V12 in here, but this V8, it's really tucked in, and it really is behind the axle center line. You've got all this air management. The front splitter feeds up into this V-mount radiator. You've got gills here on the side that extract the wheel wells out the side of the car. Really, air management was really well thought out in this car. There's trickery everywhere in how the air is handled. You know, the hardest part of reviewing a car like this is when we have to turn it back in, and I thought that the V12 was really what made an Aston, but they've done such a good job converting this engine and making it feel correct for this car. And the extra advantages you get of lighter weight, the better throttle response, the more instant torque, all of those things make the driving experience kind of even better. Sure, the normally aspirated V12 is kind of the classic, but this is the new classic.